Hello, everyone. Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central. I hope you're doing well. Today, I'm talking about some tips for learners with ADD or ADHD, or if you're working with a child or a student who has ADD or ADHD, these tips will also help. One thing to keep in mind is that I always believe that you are your own best teacher. Now, if you're 5 years old, maybe you're not ready quite yet, but you can learn how to learn and how to teach yourself. And I think that's very important. After all, it's your education. And that's why I wrote the book, Teach Myself, Teach Myself. Self taught learners do best. So check it out. It's on Amazon. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Don't worry, there's still a little bit comes to me through that program. So that's just fine. And the paperback is quite reasonably priced, I'll say too. Now, enough advertising for me. I want to get into some points that can help you right away. The first thing is be positive. Now, that might sound obvious and it might sound like an overworn statement, probably is, but it's good to keep in mind that if you're being positive, if you're thinking positive, if you're emotionally feeling positive, you will learn much better. We don't learn when we're giving ourselves negative statements or when someone else is giving us negative statements. These negative thoughts just tend to cycle and cycle and stop us sometimes completely from accomplishing what we can accomplish. We all have limits, but we don't know what they are until we've tried. So don't let those negative statements or comments or self talk stop you from achieving. The next thing is work on task avoidance, movements, fidgets, excuses, and then ignore the rest or even enjoy them. So, a lot of the time, people get over stressed, either themselves or other people are stressing them. Stop touching that, stop moving that, stop crinkling that, stop whatever it is, and focus on task. Obviously, we want to focus on task, but if you're focusing on task while still fiddling with your pencil, or while still tapping your toe or whatever that is, that little fidget, that little quirk, there's no problem. There's only two things to keep in mind. You don't want to be irritating others and you don't want to be interrupting yourself. So you don't want to be interfering with your own learning and you don't obviously if you're in a classroom you can't be interfering with other people. So I have found that many students, because I teach students usually just small, like two or three at a time, right here in the big table. The online students I'm usually doing not in group settings, but I find that a lot of students of all different ages are don't have much trouble with someone who has a little tick or a little quirk or a little problem because we all have our own little bits and pieces, don't we? So they don't seem to have much trouble. It's the adults who seem to have the biggest problem. And stop doing that. Don't move. Don't do this. And so for the adults, just try to calm down. Try to ignore because a lot of the time these things don't interfere, and it's just your own sort of set psychology that thinks that it's interfering. See if it does. See what the product is, and then work back from that. If it isn't interfering and it isn't disturbing anyone else, once you get over that initial, I was told to sit perfectly still, so everyone has to sit perfectly still, then you'll be fine. Encourage small successes. And if you're teaching yourself, encourage yourself. Tell yourself, I'm doing well. That was good. I got this done in time. I accomplished what I intended to do. It sounds kind of silly to do that to yourself. And sometimes others can overdo it. I do encourage you uh, to encourage small successes. But if your child has already accomplished something 1,000 times, it might be time to move on and encourage a new success, a new goal. So you do want them to keep moving forward. You don't want to get stuck, um, you know, doing the same thing over and over and over again. But again, being positive and encouraging, that's helpful. Movement, I'll not talk about movement. Talked a little bit about it with fidgeting and things, but reduce sit times if necessary. Some people can sit for hours on end with a book or study, no problem. Others, they just can't do it. They even if they force themselves to sit there, and it looks like they're doing something, their brain is shut off after 15, 20 minutes. So reduce sit times if you need to, but stick with a plan. So if you were planning on doing an hour's worth of homework or an hour and a half worth of homework, you still need to do that. And it might take you 2.5 hours to get it done because you need breaks in between. That's fine. But the actual work is still got to be an hour and a half. You just have to divide it up differently. And that's not really a problem as long as you do that and you stick to the plan. Some people can focus for shorter periods of time and accomplish just as much or more than another person sitting for an hour. So if you get just as much done and it's quality work in 20 minutes, then you have a break, then you come back for another 15, 20 minutes. That's fine. You can learn while you're walking and pacing. So there are certain things that you can learn that you don't need to be sitting at a desk or a table. I always recommend sitting at a desk or a table for many study skills, but there are times when you can do things while you're walking. I do or pacing when I'm trying to memorize something, a script. I don't really memorize my scripts for these videos, by the way. Most of the time I'm doing it more as if I'm talking to somebody and just chatting. But sometimes for courses and whatnot, I need to have more of a script, and but I don't want to be reading it, so I try to memorize it, and I do that by pacing. Or if I'm thinking about plans for my students, what do I need to talk to them about? What do I need to arrange for them. I do that often. I go for a walk in the park and I'm running all of these things through my mind. So I don't have to sit down and do all of the work sitting at a desk. So you can do that as well. Memory work is something you have to rehearse it over and over. And sometimes pacing or walking can help you. And you can even use the memory castle techniques. So moving through your house and putting different items in different rooms, you can literally do it by walking around your home and build that memory castle. Um, Find ways to have movement that's not distracting to you or others. So when you do have to be sitting in a classroom or some other setting where there are other people around and you're antsy, you have to move. You can't just sit there. Find subtle ways of movement. And it might not work as well right away as getting up and jumping around, but I found many students can do this. I do it myself. I was never identified as ADD or ADHD because they didn't do that back in the day, but I probably would have if I'd ever been assessed. Uh, so I like to move something. But it can be very subtle. It can be my fingers on my pen or pencil, can be my toes underneath the table, nobody can see, or my legs or something, but something that's not going to be distracting others and it isn't going to distract you either. And it might even help you to focus. I'm not a huge fan of fidget spinners and things. I mean, if they work for you in private, fine. They seem to be disturbing to others. They can be very distracting. And I have found students who use them are distracted themselves as well, but it might work for some people. But these kinds of things in a more subtle manner could work very well for you and keep you at your desk or table longer and still thinking and focusing. Your brain isn't shutting off because you are able to kind of get that movement going. If you're at home or learning on your own, or if you're teaching someone, let them get up and walk around and move a little bit and then sit back down again. There's nothing really wrong with that. Students can work standing up sometimes. In fact, it's good. You know, they have those stand-up workstations now. It's better for your health even. So don't get caught up in the psychology that there's only one way. As long as you're getting quality product and you're accomplishing your goals, that's what's important, and that's the way to measure it. Don't Directions. I want to talk a little bit about directions. Don't skip the directions. Read the directions, reread the directions, and look at the examples. There's often examples given with the directions. Students often skip the directions, and if they don't skip the directions, they definitely skip the examples. I see it all the time. I just saw it again last week. So it's happening all the time. I've done this for 27 years, and it just keeps happening over and over and over again. Even when they're sitting right in front of me, and I say, read the directions and look at the examples. And I'm jotting down 2 seconds later, well, maybe not 2 seconds, 30 seconds later, I look over, they've started the assignment. And I know they haven't read because there wasn't enough time to read all the directions and look at the examples. So, and they're doing it wrong because they haven't read everything. So don't do that. Check back once you've done a few questions or started the project, whatever it is, to ensure that you really are following all the steps or all the directions that were given. You can also highlight directions to help you to remember, but just don't highlight right away. I would read through everything first, then do a second reading because you only want to highlight the essential points. If you start highlighting right at the beginning, just as with taking notes, um, you tend to highlight everything or almost everything, and that's useless because now everything is highlighted, so nothing is highlighted actually. So don't do that. So just highlight after you've read them, and then you know the essential points that you want to focus on as you're working through. So that's just a few tips. There's lots of others, of course, but in a short video, I just wanted to touch on some of the biggies. I know people get very disturbed by other people moving around or even in themselves. I've heard students say, really negative comments about themselves in terms of their ability to learn, their ability to read, their ability to take notes, their ability to sit still. Yeah, you can be very negative. There's lots of negativity out there, and people are quite willing to dump on you if you let them. But don't do that, and don't do it to yourself either. Find a way to work with what you do have. And a lot of people with attention deficits, it doesn't have to be ADD or ADHD even. These tips work for anyone. It doesn't matter. These are good tips because movement can help you to learn sometimes. The only question is, or the only issue is making sure that it's not disturbing others and that it's actually helping you and not harming your ability to learn. So you can rein it in and refocus it, retool it, so to speak, to work for you rather than against you and to help others as well. Yeah, I guess that could be my last point. I wasn't going to mention it, and I didn't mention it in the written or the printed blog. Check that out. I'll put a link below for the book Teach Myself, and also for the blog that will be coming up at the same time as this video or shortly after. Um, Helping others to learn can help you, whether you have ADD or not. Helping others to learn is a great way to learn because you're reteaching yourself and you learn patience and how to explain things to others, and that can help you be patient with you too. All right, it's Ron from LTL Tutoring Central. Keep learning, keep having fun, be kind to yourself. Until next time, bye bye for now.